Namaste. Welcome everyone to Satsang tonight. Just reminding you to, if you can, just to stay muted during the session so that we don't get any background noise going on. Thank you. So with every satsang, it's an opportunity in each satsang and also in each moment to recognize what we really are, and to be able to consciously live as that. That's the reason for this gathering. The reason that we gather like this is to recognize that there is so much more to us than we perhaps may have recognized. And as always, during the week leading up to the satsangs, there's always a theme suggested by questions from people that I'm working with during the week. And this week, the same sentence has come out of 4 or 5 mouths without anybody sort of agreeing between each other that this was a subject. So enough hinting from the universe. I'm going to talk about what the question was, and it really came up around loving our egoic sense of self. 4 or 5 times this week I've heard this, I don't know how to do that. You know, I think all of us innately know perhaps that love is the answer to everything, and that love is everything, and everything is love. Perhaps we may know that mentally, but when it comes to our own sense of being someone, our own egoic sense of self, a separate person, it can sometimes seem a real challenge to love that when it comes up. So that's really what I want to dive into tonight, and hopefully give some really practical, useful advice about that. Because it seems a strange thing that we should have to get advice from someone on how to love ourselves more. That a lot of us feel, everybody that I've come across, my own self in my own awakening, had this idea, had an idea that we should automatically know how to do this. Like I should know how to fall in love with myself. And I'm not talking about the formlessness, you know, we're all pretty much in love with that already, or to be on satsang, but how that formlessness is manifesting right now for each one of us, as in our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, our personality, our quirks, our perceived flaws, and everything that goes into making you you. So why should it be so hard to love that? You know, that's what I really want to address tonight. And what do we actually do when it arises, when that sense of suffering, or when some strong negative emotion arises to seemingly disturb our peace? Does that need to happen? Do we need to be disturbed when something arises? And no matter how many times we've heard this, we can always hear it deeper. We can always fall more in love with yourself. And I don't mean in a sort of self-centered way. I mean a clearer recognition of who you already are. You know, startling as it may seem, most people that I work with wouldn't even know whether they were actually the person that they're striving to be, to have the qualities that they're striving to achieve, because they're so busy rejecting who they are now and heading towards some future finish line where they feel innately, when I look like this, when my personality is like this, and I've got rid of A, B, and C, and I've got X, Y, and Z, then I'll be the person I want to be. But how can we ever recognize that if we can't love what we are already? How can you know who you are and where you're headed if you're not able to clearly look right now? And if when you do look, it's with this should and shouldn't that most of us have deeply going on within our own consciousness, and never more so than when we're on a path to awakening. You know, I should be more like this and less like this is something that we all struggle with. You know, because if you fall in love with someone else, if you meet, you know, Mr. or Mrs. Right, you don't need instructions on how to fall in love with them. I remember, you know, one car that I got that I wanted for years and years, and finally it came into my life, and I didn't need any instructions on how to love this car. It was very clear. So why don't we do that with ourselves? Why are we so sure that we're not there yet, that we're not good enough, that we aren't getting it, that we're not understanding it? And this is what I really want to dig into tonight. So firstly, what is it when we fall in love with something else or someone else that we do that we don't do with ourselves? And really, if we stop and look at that, it is a total appreciation and recognition of that person, thing, situation, whatever it is, as it is right now in its entirety. Nobody has ever fallen in love with anyone else and said, "You're the person I've been waiting for, and I just need you to change all of these things about yourself before I'll really love you." That may come afterwards when our minds start to get in the way. But in that moment when we first fall in love, there's no urge to change that person at all. And if we watch a newborn baby or a beautiful sunrise or some scene in nature, we are not at all in opposition to what is in that moment. We are completely appreciating how things are right now. So can we learn to do that with our own self, wherever we're at right now, no matter what we think is going on right now? Can we just learn to actually look at ourselves with fresh eyes and to choose not to agree with these self-judgments that go on for most of us? So to do that, I want to really sort of redefine and look again at what love actually is. Love is acceptance. Love is understanding. Love wants to know why something is the way it is. It wants to understand everything about it. It wants to know, like we all love the truth. That's why we're in Satsang. We want to know everything we can about it. We want to experience it. We love it so much. We want to be it consciously. Can we do that with our own self? Well, firstly, if we recognize that accepting how we are right now in this moment doesn't mean that we have to like what is going on right now. Love is acceptance. If you look at the real self, the formlessness, awareness, silence, peace, stillness, whatever you want to call your real nature, it doesn't have any capacity to reject anything at all. It's equally aware of negative emotions, positive emotions. It will be the same awareness that looks upon a very peaceful mind and body, that looks upon a very disturbed emotionally, physically, mind and body. So can we just strip back what we think love is, especially when it comes to ourself and loving ourselves, and just start with a recognition of how it actually is in this moment? So how do we do that? It's just to admit what is. And so if we're feeling some negative emotion, if our piece is really quite profound and then some emotion arises or some thoughts come and seem to disturb that, if in the moment that they arise we immediately go into opposition with that and rejection of that, then we are in denial of what reality is in this moment. In this moment, you are showing up as your body, as those thoughts, as that negative emotion, as this moment. And if you're saying, this is not how it should be, this emotion should not be here, these thoughts should go away, then you are actually saying reality isn't how it should be. The self isn't how it should be. So it's a different way of looking at ourselves. Why don't we do this instinctively? Well, because there's some idea deep down in our minds, and if you search your own consciousness, you'll find this idea buried in there, that if I accept this emotion, if I accept this thought pattern, if I accept this experience that keeps on happening, it's going to continue. That's what our mind tells us. If you actually look, it's the opposite, isn't it? Not accepting it, not admitting what is right now, has actually keeps causing this recurrence of this same thought pattern, same emotion. So if you search our consciousness and admit that there is this idea that the most intelligent thing to do in this moment is to push against this thing that comes up, whether it's physical pain, whether it's emotional pain, whether it's some mental pain, some experience that's going on in our outer world that involves us, or maybe a combination of all of those, some sense of lack of something. Our instinctive thing is to push against that, and we're very good at it. But is that really love? Is that really also working? Is it really going to bring us peace? So to tackle this question, we have to really take a look at can we change this moment as it already is? So if right now, for example, you're feeling some negative emotion or some a lot of thoughts coming up, some doubt, maybe if there's a sense of guilt, whatever is happening in your egoic sense of self, can you change that? Can you make this moment different than it actually is in right now? And as much as our mind says we can, you cannot actually. You can encourage the moment to look more like you want it to be in the next moment as this moment continues to unfold. But how it's already shown up for you, your body, your mind, your emotions, your experience, you cannot change what has already appeared. And yet, all of us spend most of our time trying to do that exact thing. If I push against this emotion, if I try to grab onto bliss and peace, then that's going to make my experience better, is the assumption. But if you look back at your life and your experiences, you can see that it's just not true. In fact, it's the opposite of what occurs. The moment I try to push against something, my very pushing against is a denial of what's happening in this moment. It should not be this way, is what I'm saying in my energy. And the only thing that can come out of that is a continued agreeance from life that says, yes, I agree, it should not be this way. Here's some more of it, so that you can still feel it should not be this way. Because you are that real self already that is infinitely powerful. Whatever you agree on is going to show up for you. That's the basis of what we're talking about tonight. So instead we can say, well, this thing is here. We don't have to say, I'm scared. We don't have to say, I'm feeling guilty. You can say, I'm here, and there's fear in the body. There's experience of lack. But we don't have to take it personally. We can just admit that this emotion is here, give it permission to exist as much as we can in this moment. It's already here. Trying to get rid of it or saying that it should not be here is a horrendous waste of energy and focus. It doesn't work, and it only serves to disturb you, because you are all of this, however it's showing up in an experience or in a feeling in here. If you're pushing against it, you're saying, I'm not how I'm supposed to be. Life isn't how it's supposed to be. Reality isn't how it's supposed to be. All the same thing. So instead, we accept what is. Well, it's here. There's nothing I can do about it. That doesn't mean we have to like it. You can actually accept what is and prefer something else at the same time. You can accept what is now. This is how the body feels right now. I'm not going to argue with that. It'd be nice if it lifted. It'd be nice if I could get back to peace. It'd be nice if in the next moment. And it's the perfect stance for you to take, to accept how it is now. So you're not spending all of your energy pushing against. If you think back, look at your experience. Every time a negative emotion has come up, or every time some disturbance has happened in your world, the very first thing we all do is begin to try to reject it, as if that is going to make it stop. And it never, ever has worked, ever. It may temporarily push it back down under the surface, but it's got to come back up again until you accept it, until you fall in love with it. How can you fall in love with guilt or shame or fear? It's just to accept it is here right now. All of us can do that. I'm not asking you to like it, but I am asking you to love it, to say this is a part of me in this moment. This is how I'm feeling right now. This is what's going on. Otherwise, we're just kind of walking around like the ostrich with its head in the sand, wondering why we're not feeling peaceful. And there is no way to get to peace when you are insisting that this moment is not how it should be. So if we can accept what is in this moment, then we're going to begin to feel something change. How I feel is just how I feel. And immediately there'll be a sense of contentment or even peace alongside the fear, the guilt, the shame, or the experience that's going on. Nothing will have changed in your body or your experience, but you will immediately not be in opposition with what is. If you are, whether you've realized it consciously or not, whether you're living as it or not, you are reality. So the moment you're pushing against anything, if you're pushing against an experience out there in your world, you're pushing against yourself, because that is also you. If you're pushing against an emotion that you'd rather get rid of, that is also you showing up as that emotion. So it's a self-rejection, a self-negation, a self-denial. Every time you deny anything. So we can begin to reprogram ourselves, rewire ourselves to accept what is. And at the same time, then we're open and available, and there's a highest chance. In fact, it has to begin to change in that openness. If I give this fear permission to exist in this moment in my body, although I really would rather not feel this way, I'm going to accept and admit that I am, that it's here. And maybe it's here because it just wants acceptance, like all of us do. So we accept what is, and naturally it begins to lighten and change. That's why it's called enlightenment, because we can love these energies when they come back up. Acceptance is love. Understanding is love as well. Why are these patterns running? Why am I having this experience? Why does this emotion keep coming up? Well, maybe because I've never actually loved it before, just loved it. And nobody wants to feel these heavy emotions. But if they're there, actually pushing against them isn't going to make them go away. You may as well love them while they're there and see what happens. See if there's a different way of dealing with them, of just allowing them to exist. If I said to, if I'm saying to myself, this emotion shouldn't be here, then I'm really in negation of myself. I shouldn't be here, is what I'm saying, because this emotion is how I'm showing up in this moment. So if you're starting to get the idea behind this, then anything that we're saying should be different than it is in this moment is going to hurt us. Even if I'm saying the world out there is not how it should be in this moment. Of course, we may all want a better world. Of course, we may want that. But to deny how it is in this moment is not going to help anyone. And it's going to cause us to feel divided inside. And that is what makes us feel bad. So an acceptance of what is will allow it to change. My mind is convinced that they are opposite. That if I accept this thing, then it's never going to change or go away. Our mind says the way to get rid of something is to push it away. And the way to keep something that I like peace and bliss, is to grab a hold of it. I have never met anyone who that has actually worked for more than a few seconds. And believe me, I've tried to grab a hold of peace and bliss for a very long time, and it really didn't work. And each one of us, I can see the same thing going on. I'm trying to grab the things I want and push against the things I don't want. So if you fall in love with ourselves, what does that mean? It means just a clear recognition of how I am in this moment. And even if there's shoulds and shouldn'ts in my head going on about this moment, I can completely allow them as thoughts to exist without agreeing with them. How do I not agree with them? I'm just allowing whatever wants to show up as me in this moment. Doesn't mean you're going to lose control of your anger and go completely crazy. It doesn't mean that perhaps the heavy grief feeling is going to overwhelm you. This is the safest way to allow as much of this stuff as you can in this moment, to accept it's here. And then it can finally begin to enlighten. It's on its own journey back to peace. And it just wants to be felt. It wants to be allowed to exist and to be felt. And then it will begin to lift. So why don't we all do this inherently, innately? It's because somehow we've got this idea that to accept something is going to overwhelm us, or I'll have to live with it forever. But as intelligent human beings, we can see that that isn't actually what's happening. Pushing this thing away, is it really effective anyway? Doesn't it just come back stronger next time? And maybe the opposite is true. If I accept this thing and welcome it, even though I don't like it or want it, maybe it will come back in a softer way each time until it's gone completely. So can you fall in love with yourself right now in this moment? Can you love yourself exactly as you already are? Without the idea that if I was worthy enough, this thing wouldn't be happening in my life. Without the idea that if I was awakened enough, this negative emotion wouldn't be appearing. Awakened beings will occasionally feel some negative emotion, some fragment, less and less the more you practice this. But when it's felt, it's completely allowed to arise, absolutely embraced, and it's gone within seconds. When you get really good at this, falling back in love with fear seems crazy to do with the mind. But you can actually then begin to experience peace and fear, bliss and guilt at the same time. Are you really going to care about the guilt being there then? Or is it only this idea that guilt is getting in the way of bliss, or that anger is getting in the way of your peace? What if even that isn't true? You can discover something wonderful when you begin to love yourself as you are. I don't fight against myself in this moment. And something wonderful happens. When I don't say that I should be other than I am, when I finally recognize how I am right now, which is really what the real self is doing. If I'm saying I shouldn't be this way, then I'm reacting as my egoic sense of self. If I accept myself as I am in this moment, then I'm responding from the real self. So it's a choice in every single moment. If somebody is being angry and irritating, and you can feel some emotion arising, and you really rather them just leave you alone, can you accept that is how you feel right now, 100%? Can you not should yourself and say, I should be able to love this person more in this moment? Can you love yourself and say, actually, I'm irritated right now? And just inside admit how you're actually feeling. What if this very simple thing was the gateway to nirvana? What if you did this consistently enough that you forgot how to argue with yourself or this moment or anything? What if you let go completely of this idea that to push against something is how to make it change? And what if inside you weren't in any conflict with yourself? Maybe for the first time ever, you weren't at war with yourself. And then because you're everywhere, it has to begin to reflect back in your experience. And you can see at the moment the shoulding and shouldn'ting that's been reflected that must be going on inside all of us. And if we can just learn this one simple thing, how to love ourselves. You know, amazing as it was, I realized I'd lived for like 35 years, I'm 45 now, and I'd never once loved myself ever when I realized this. Never once in that whole time was there a cessation of this war raging inside between who I thought I was and who I thought I should be, or how awakened I thought I was and how awakened I thought I should be as that search progressed and deepened. Are you using your own enlightenment against yourself to prove that you're, you know, to stay at war with yourself? And is it really working? Is it really worth it? As crazy as it seems, we're all doing this one thing because we're sure it works, and yet it's never actually worked. We're all pushing against what is from this mistaken idea that none of us perhaps have ever really investigated if it's actually working and if it's true. Somewhere, someone gave us this idea that what we do with emotions is push them away. What we do with experiences is try to change them. What we do with thoughts is try to silence them. Is any of that actually working in your life for more than a few moments? Or does it not just set up this extra round, this next time around the loop with the same emotion, the same experience, the same thoughts? So this simple question, how can I love myself more in this moment? Just simply to recognize how you are in this moment. Maybe letting go of any ideas of what it means to be awake and what it means to be spiritual. A spiritual person is very different to an awakened being, somebody who's trying to be more loving, compassionate, and all of that. Very, very different than someone that's actually not at war with themselves, has no capacity anymore to say, I shouldn't be how I am in this moment, or you shouldn't be how you are in this moment. And those beings have a profound effect on everything around them. It lifts up the entire consciousness of humanity just by accepting what is. And again, it doesn't mean condoning, it doesn't mean agreeing with, it doesn't mean liking what is, but you have to admit if it's there, it's there. It's kind of common sense in a way, and yet none of us are doing it. So what does it feel like in this moment if you completely allow yourself to be who you are? If you just this moment let go of any should or shouldn't about yourself. Let go of this idea that there shouldn't be any negative emotions and there should only be peace, love, and joy. That will be your experience then, because these emotions will be felt and will go. There may be constant peace in the awakened state, but the awakened beings haven't got there by rejecting what is. And no matter how far we've come on this path, we can always love ourselves more. And our self is seen to be everywhere. The more that you do this, the more you'll see. The more I love myself here, the more my world reflects that back to me. The judgmental thoughts, the blame, the self-judging thoughts may still come up for a while, but you can totally accept them as well, totally love them as well, without identifying with them. Emotion arises, great fear arises, and another thought immediately comes up, I don't want this. I don't like this. It should go away. This means I'm failing. This means I'm going backwards. This means I'm not getting anywhere. This means I'm not good enough. Can you just let all of those thoughts arise with that emotion and just let them all be there? And what happens when you do that? What happens? How does your body feel when you're no longer in conflict inside? Everyone you'll ever meet pretty much is in conflict with themselves and the world constantly. But there is a different way. There is another way, a simpler way, much to my own relief when I found it. They can just allow what comes to come. And in doing so, it naturally seems to change into what I would like it to be anyway. When I don't allow, when I resist and push against, it stays as what I don't want it to be. What is it like to be free for a moment from shoulds and shouldn'ts? I really hope you're feeling this in this moment. I really hope you're having a taste of what it is like to be free of any should or shouldn't about yourself, just for this moment now. And if you like it, you can do it for the next moment. And in this way, you just put down the sword, you put down the idea that you're not who you're supposed to be yet. And all the things you've been pushing against seem to sort of evaporate anyway. And all the things you've wanted to get start to come towards you anyway. And soon you'll be inspired to fall even deeper in love with yourself. What if you made yourself a promise right now as you're listening to this, watching this with me, that you will try to love yourself more each day? What can I love about myself that I tend to push away when it happens? This experience, that person, this emotion, these particular thoughts. What if today was the day you decided you were going to fall in love with yourself? What would that look like? Nobody knows. But I can tell you what it will feel like. It will feel like peace. It will be peaceful. We are not actually ever suffering anyway from those thoughts, those experiences, or those emotions. It's our tendency to divide ourselves. You are the indivisible one, and you are everywhere. Whether you're aware of this or not, it will still hurt you if you divide yourself and separate yourself from the emotion that you're trying to push away. If you go into a relationship with it, if you try to do something with it. It's totally possible to meet life from the open authenticity, to meet yourself, of just looking, watching at how you actually are and seeing, is that really such a terrible thing to do? Am I going to lose control? Am I going to be stuck with all the traits that I don't like about myself? And am I just going to be giving up on all the things I would like to have, such as peace, love, joy, bliss? If you try it, you may find it's exactly the opposite to what your mind says. Exactly. And there's a wonderful stopping that occurs in this, a slowing down. You'll be less tired, you'll have more vitality because you won't be wasting so much energy trying to reject what's already happened, trying to reject how this moment is already appearing. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and again, even though it doesn't work. What I'm asking and showing tonight is something even simpler and immediate. Immediately you'll feel different. You'll feel whole. You'll feel somehow your sense of self-esteem and worth will be increased just because you're not fighting with yourself already. After you do this for a while, it becomes automatic and effortless. And you can never ever again have any idea of how you should be in this moment and how you shouldn't be in this moment. Okay. So I hope you're feeling wonderful. I see a hand already up. I will open it up for questions. I'll come to you, Steve, in a moment. If you would like to ask a question, click on the participants section at the bottom of your screen, and there is an option to raise hand, and it'll let me know that you want to ask a question. Okay, so we'll start with Steve.
Hiya,
whenever you're ready. Hiya.
Hiya. This satsang tonight has been, for me, really. It's
good.
Yeah.
I always love how, you know, the same subject comes up with people during the week, and everybody ends up saying, "Oh, that was exactly what I needed to hear."
Strange, that, isn't it? Yeah, but it's spot on. Because last week I had a bout of fear. Yesterday I got a bit bored, fed up myself. And today I got up, I couldn't get going. Watched you and Michael in the conversation you and Michael had, and then I went back to bed, and I woke up again, and I was still tired, and then that fear came back, fear of depression and all sort of came back, and I just wanted to go back to sleep again, you know. And I was tired, but I'm thinking, is this tiredness, Steve, or are you running away from it? You know, and I looked at it not first time, but what am I scared of here? And I realised I was scared of it overpowering me again, this depression.
Yeah.
And I did realise I was running from it, get sleep out of the way of it, you know what I mean? Which is what I usually do. So I sat and I thought, oh no, I'll turn around and I thought, come on, let's have a look. Let's have a look and see what you do. And like you said, there's that thick piece around it, but it didn't feel very nice. It felt horrible, you know what I mean? But I get the peace, and I go back into that manky feeling. But the fear has stopped a bit. The fear wasn't there so much, but it just still don't feel particularly right nice now. But something I've heard, I don't know if you've said it or something, I've heard it somewhere that do you want peace, bliss, enlightenment, or do you want truth?
Yeah.
And that rung true to us. That's the first time I really see what they're saying about that. And I thought, well, I want truth. You know?
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, well, after I settled down with that after about half an hour and so, I still went back to bed. But I wasn't sleeping, I'm more like contemplation, meditation going on with my eyes shut and laid in bed. I didn't go back to sleep, I won't bother one way over. And then I was thinking, oh, what Helen would say. There you are, you come on and told me.
If we want truth in that moment more than we want peace, love, or joy, or to get rid of fear, then the truth in that moment is there is fear.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do about that. And mind hates that. But the real self will love that. There is something opens up in that. Like, there's nothing I can do about this. Right now it's here. That's the truth, isn't it? If I want the truth, that's what I've got to recognize. And then some peace, or at least some contentment or lack of suffering will occur. Even if the fear is still there, you won't be suffering from it, because you're not saying this fear has to go away before peace can come back. You're open to the possibility that it can both be there in the same moment, you know. And you keep on diving deeper into that fear. See if you can love it a bit more. See if you can find out what it really is a bit more. Become a discoverer and explorer, what it actually is.
I'll try to, but usually it'll start to dissipate now. That's how it seems to work for me. It goes, so I've got to wait till, I don't like to say this, but I've got to wait till next time to do it again. That seems the way it is with me, I don't know.
And one time it just won't come back when you do it this way.
That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're no longer in resistance to it. It can be felt, it can be transmuted. It'll come back a few times, like another wave of it. But the more you embrace it when it comes, again, you don't have to like it. Nobody likes fear, do they? You know, it's just,
No,
we'd rather have bliss, but you know,
I
it's
sort of
there.
think it shouldn't be there. That's how I'm thinking, like you've been talking about. It shouldn't be
Just
there
let
now.
that thought then be there too. It shouldn't be
Okay.
there, says mind. Okay, that's your opinion. You know, I'm not going to agree either way. I'm just going to let be what is, you know, and see what happens. Mind can, you know, so emotional rise, and mind will have an opinion about the emotion, and you don't have to agree with it. You can just say, okay, you know, here it is. It's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, well done. Thank you for sharing. That's lovely. Great stuff. Okay, Lopo.
Hi, Helen. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I have a real like burning question, and it's around like, you know, when like we're asking the question, say like who am I really, you know, or well, all the questions really, and so when I'm wanting to ask with curiosity, I feel like it's an act. Like I'm pretending to ask with curiosity, because it feels like my mind wants, like it's got a stump, and it's like I already know what I am.
Yeah.
So like, and then I'm trying to then go, no, you don't. You know what I mean? And so then I'm like, well, I'm not asking the question properly, so then I'm not doing it properly. So I'm not sure how to get past the, you know, being real about being curious.
Yeah, well, curious, great question. Curiosity is more of an attitude than anything we're doing. You know, and here you are still in Satsang, still asking this question. Would you really be doing that if you weren't curious about what reality is, what you really are? You know, it's more of an attitude. Like, I really want to find out. Of course, you know, we ask that question, what really am I? We're going to have some thought answers. You know, mind has an opinion about everything. You know, it's a self-made expert, and it will tell you, I know what I am, or I don't know what. You're never going to find out what you are. It'll say you're not being curious enough. You know, so could this sense that you're not being curious enough just be another mind answer to this question? Can you just say, okay, that's another thought answer, and there are deeper answers that I'd like to, you don't have to agree with it either way. If you agree with a statement that you're not being curious enough, then you're off around the loop again, aren't you? Trying to be more curious. You know, it's got you.
Yeah,
it's got you
yeah.
on the fishing line. So you can just
really
allow
good.
that and say, okay, that's your opinion. You know, like if you had a friend that kept showing up that was a little bit mouthy and kept telling you all about your business, eventually you just kind of say, well, that's your opinion. You know, I'm going to actually do it my own way. You know, and then see what happens when you just kind of our mind is never going to understand this process, and that you're naturally open and curious, so it's going to be giving you lots of helpful feedback according to it, you know, and you just have to, okay, there, thanks for your opinion, you know, and let me just carry on anyway. Nothing that happens in your mind can stop you from waking up to truth, seeing it, you know, and if you weren't curious enough, you wouldn't have made it to Satsang. You wouldn't have made it this far, would you? You wouldn't. It's already a bit too late. Mind doesn't realize that. No, it's a bit behind the curve with this one.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen. May I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So I'm like, even with being off work and things, I am hugely busy. Or I'm allowing myself to be really busy, and with the other program that I'm in as well, there's a lot of work to do, and a lot of Zoom meetings and things like that, and a lot of connection. I don't know how to go about. I know how to prioritize, but I'm not sure how I don't know. I just don't know the best way to put this first. I want to put it first. And I've had moments where I've really tried, but then something's come up and I've had to go and sort it and all that sort of stuff. Or I've felt like I've had to go and sort it. So I don't know. Yeah, I want to prioritize this because this is what I want. Yeah.
So the prioritizing it is in your own heart. That's the place where it matters. You know, I've seen people wake up when they've had 10 minutes a day.
Okay.
I've also been the other extreme where as an Olympic meditator, you know, tried to meditate for 7 or 8 hours a day, reading 3 or 4 books at the same time, you know, trying to shove this stuff into me, and it just had no effect at all because I was trying to do it to get somewhere or to get away from a pain, you know, or whatever it was that was going on. So it's really your heart's desire. And you wouldn't be asking a question like, how do I make sure I put this first? You would be sat on a sofa with your feet up watching a telly or something instead of being asking this question, you know. Nothing wrong with that, obviously, but it's good to check, but just to recognize that it's not about a doing with truth. It's about what you love most. You know, all of us have busy lives, and some of us have very little time to give to our practice, and that's fine. As long as if you had 5 minutes a day, but you did it from the place of absolutely loving truth, it would be just as effective, more so, than 12 hours a day done because I want to be someone, you know, or whatever the motivation is behind that. So it's you can relax and you know what time you'll probably find that your time rearranges itself anyway once you've sort of seen through this, because you're not the doer, your body's doing things, you're not doing anything anyway, you know. So you kind of, it doesn't matter what my body's doing, I'm always in love with truth with myself anyway.
That's beautiful.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Good questions. Ronald?
Thanks, Helen. I have 2 very brief observations and then 1 question. I had a chance to watch a lot of movies over the last 3 months with what's going on with COVID. So I was watching a movie called The Wedding Date, and there was at the very end of the scene, this is a woman that has hired an escort. She lives in New York. She's British. He's American, and she hires him to accompany her to a wedding in England as her date because her ex-fiance was going to be there. She wanted to make him jealous. So at the very end, they end up falling in love, and he's getting ready to leave. They had a big falling out, and he turns around at the very end, goes back to her and said, and this is good to your point about loving yourself, said, I realized that I would rather fight with you than make love to anybody else. So it's you know, it's easy to say. It's hard to really feel that resonate inside your bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other was, and I think you clarified it, I've sensed at least, or wondered that maybe not liking is almost a form of a resistance. And, you know, resistance, you resist, it persists. But I like what you said about just let it be, don't answer.
Yeah.
Because then it's just neutral. So that was helpful. The question I have is just wondering, same thing about having a preference. You know, we've all kind of been, or many of us have been through law of attraction light, where you can attract anything that you want, but we don't really know. Be careful what you want because you'll get it, because we don't know what's best for us. So I was just wondering your thoughts around that. Again, accepting totally what's there, but at the same time having a different preference. Could you expound upon that a little bit?
Yeah, if you, it's a good question. If you are wanting to live more consciously as the real self, that is only ever going to be in acceptance with what is. At the same time, there can be the mind and body personality that will still be there, the sense of being someone, which may have a preference in that moment. You know, and even now, you know, I still prefer this type of food to another type. You know, there's certain stuff I don't like to eat, certain stuff I would like, places I'd like to go, you know, and So that surface preference is going to play for all of us, but it's not defining who you are. So that preference can be there. I'd rather not feel the way I feel right now, but what overrides that is, but I do feel this way, and I don't want to argue with that. You know, so the two aren't necessarily in conflict. The desire to feel different is going to allow, is a symptom or a sign that you are starting to feel better. If we all look at what we really want anyway, it's to feel good, isn't it? It's the most basic thing. We want to feel safe, we want to feel happy, we want to feel loved, we want to feel peaceful. And that is always why we're trying to get rid of this emotion anyway, is because we think it's going to make us feel better, or this situation or whatever it is that's going on. So if we recognize what we don't really want to get rid of fear or guilt or shame or suffering. We want to feel better. We want to feel good. And that you can't always get rid of an emotion straight away, but you can always feel good by accepting what is, you know, peace be there all the time, no matter what other thing is playing in the mind and body. And they're not in conflict. You know, you can still have a part of you. Of course, we'd want to feel peaceful, joyful, you know, rather than continuing to feel those lower emotions. But what will override that as the awakened state matures within you is just a inability to argue with what is, and that becomes the more dominant vibration than pushing against this thing that's happening. Or do you get a sense of it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is by not confronting whatever that preference is at that point in time, it allows the acceptance to start creeping in. And it's kind of an incremental building that as you loop back around over time doing that then the preference just generally will drop away because you're kind of accepting what is, except if it's eating eggplant or, you know, something you really find disgusting. So.
Yeah, if you realize that you can feel good even with fear there, then you won't be pushing against fear naturally. That becomes more, you know, and you faced fear a couple of times and it didn't overwhelm you and you felt peace while it was there, then your response to fear next time it happens is going to be different anyway, isn't it? And obviously I'm just using fear as an example. You could put anything in there instead, but you can you become much more confident in yourself, much more self-assured in your ability to welcome anything, you know, even sort of guilt and shame and things we really don't want to feel, you know, those kind of really heavy things, because you see, it doesn't have to disturb my peace. It's this idea that it's going to disturb my peace and I can't feel peaceful till it's gone. But what's causing the peace to seemingly go is only the idea that my experience should be different than it is. It's nothing to do with the emotion that's actually there anyway. You know, it's because we're in resistance with what is. So when we really see that and experience it, it's like, wow, I can feel anything and still be peaceful. And even I've experienced extreme fear and bliss and peace at the same time. And I didn't think it was possible until it happened. You know, and I was, oh gosh, there's nothing that can disturb my feeling good now. You know, if I welcome whatever comes. And it becomes it's an ongoing thing. It's more of an art or a science, and there's no finish line with it. You can always get better at it no matter how far you've come, you know. But yeah, you won't be pushing against anything when you realize you're peaceful already anyway. You know, the more that establishes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good question, Rob. Thanks. Sergio? Some amazing questions tonight. Can you hear us, Sergio? I think you're still muted.
So,
there we go.
Sorry for that. Thank you.
That's okay. It's okay.
I heard you in another satsang saying that you do pray. How can I pray? Or how do you pray?
Whichever way you feel inclined to. You know, it can be a formal thing. It can be an informal thing. To me, I don't see a difference between, at least now, I don't see a difference between meditation contemplation on the real self is a form of prayer, isn't it? Putting attention upon what is real. To me, prayer is more of a communion with what is real. And in fact, it's even what we're talking about tonight, isn't it? It doesn't have to be an asking and trying to get something from something outside of you. That's, I suppose, how it starts for all of us. You know, I remember, you know, please God, help me wake up and, you know, I'll save the world or something. You know, that was where I started in my prayer, but it became more of just, I want to see what's real. You know, I just want to know what's real, and I want to show me what's real, and I'll embrace it as much as I can. So it became more of a questioning, an invitation, an opening. And it's still, you know, sometimes I'll just sit here and just like, I'm just so grateful for everything that's been given, even though ironically it's all the one self. And you know, who's praying to who, it doesn't really matter. You know, it's just it's a form of worship to meditate on the self anyway, isn't it? To meditate on the one, on the real being. And whether that's with your hands in a prayer position, or if you're just walking down the street, you know, amazed at the beauty of the one in all of its forms, it's the same inner feeling, isn't it? It's a reverence for what is, you know, and all the ways that the real self is appearing. You know, whether you're admiring a sunset or a blossom on a tree, or you're playing with your pets, or whatever you're doing, it can be a worship, it can be a prayer. It can, your whole life can be turned into a prayer, actually. You know, and it's wonderful because you might still formally get down on your knees and pray. That may just be the way the body is moved to express that, or it might just be a very quiet inner thing. It kind of happens more and more anyway as you wake up, because there's just so much joy and gratitude and peace that you just sometimes have to express it. You know, and sometimes I feel moved to write something, sometimes just to listen to some music. All of these are, to me, are forms of worshipping, praying, you know, without the structure so much to it. It's just something your heart wants to do, isn't it? You can feel. It's even Satsang is a form of prayer, because it's association with the truth, with those beings that have realized truth. So it's a form of prayer in that way. And by now, probably your whole life is a prayer and you haven't realized it. Your whole life is about awakening, you know. And probably for everyone on the Satsang, it's already like that, although maybe we haven't realized. Lovely. Fantastic. Good. We'll move to Mandy.
Oh, hi there.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. So I'm completely new to this.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. So
you're in the best possible place. Don't think for a second that you've got loads to learn. You know,
I have.
absolutely not.
I'm you know, confused by a lot of the stuff that's been said at this moment in time, but that's okay. I'm okay with that.
You can probably feel, sorry to just interrupt you, but you can probably feel, even though your mind doesn't understand what's being said, something about your heart does. You know, something gets it inside, something likes it inside. You can feel a resonance with it somewhere.
Yeah.
And your mind doesn't ever have to understand it, but you might be feeling peace. I've seen people wake up very quickly, 1 or 2 satsangs in, because they don't understand anything I'm saying, and they're not even trying to then.
Yeah.
You know, some people have some very deep experiences just because of that. So anyway, sorry, go ahead with you.
No, it's okay. I'm hoping that this question's kind of okay to say at this point. Anyway, I'm just going to say it. So a few of the things that you've said about being in opposition to you know, what we're thinking and what the mind's thinking, and about accepting whatever is. But my question is based around everything that's happening in the world today with the whole racism. Surely, in my thinking, there are times that we have to be in opposition to things, and surely there has to be times when we don't feel at peace, because that's how we change things. So it's kind of, I don't really know what my question is, but you know, should there be times when we're not at peace, so that it moves us into action to change things? And yeah, because I've listened to some other of your videos, and there was one that says something about, you know, that the external stuff that's happening in the world is actually part of our experience as well. It's part of us. So how do we accept the stuff that's going on that we know is wrong?
So we can, it's a really good question. We can firstly examine the assumption that how things change is because we're not at peace. What if being at peace is actually a more effective way to cause change? That assumption that I'm less effective if I'm peaceful. That there is, I felt it myself inside when I was waking up too, that to be awake is going to make me more placid, more, I don't know, passive, more docile, more less effective, and I won't really care about anything. And that is a kind of stereotypical thought that a lot of us have, but that's actually the exact opposite. When I am not in conflict with myself in that moment, as we were talking about earlier, and I'm totally clear and present in this moment and able to take any action that needs to be taken, you know, and just because there's a deep seeing that this world out here is me, our mind says, okay, well, if I realize that all of this out here is me also, I'm not going to care about any of it. But it's actually the opposite. We're deeply moved to take appropriate action. In fact, that's all you can do. Whereas if we're still in our ideas about ourselves being a separate being, we might be overcome by fear or anger or whatever's, you know, flooding through the body at the time when something's happening. So being at peace within your own self gives you more resources, more clarity, more space within your being to take the best action, the highest action that's possible in that moment. And your energy field that you're emitting when you're not in conflict with yourself has an effect on other beings. It begins to give them a chance to come out of their own conflict. Maybe at first just while they're around you, it's only a temporary thing at first, but that you'll actually begin to influence events because your peace is so profound. And we've seen this around every great awakened teacher that's walked this planet. You know, they've changed things massively. And to answer the second part of your question, if I remember, and do correct me if it's not the right thing I'm answering, you don't have to, they're not in opposition to be accepting of what is in this moment, admitting this is what's happening right now in the world. There is unrest, there is violence, there is a great call for change going on. Admitting that, you know, how things are, some beings are behaving in a way that we would rather them not. That's how it is. And we can accept that that is going on and at the same time have a desire for that to change. But unless you know where you're starting from, how can you get to where you want to be? If you're setting off on a journey and you say to your Sat-Nav, send me here, but the Sat-Nav can't find where you're starting from, how effective is it going to be? We can't admit where we are right now. Can you get a sense of it? It's not condoning, it's not agreeing with, it's certainly not necessarily liking or wanting whatever is occurring. But if you can see that the world is, when the self is infinite and everywhere, there is only the one being. You don't have to have experienced that to understand this answer. When it thinks it's a separate human being, alone in time and space, and it was born and it's going to die at some point, basically it's identifying with the body, thinks it is the body. It acts in ways that are can be very unloving. It can be very harmful. It can cause harm to other beings. It can try to accumulate. You know, we've all seen the effects of those beliefs. So we can accept that that is how the self is acting in that person because it's sure, it's convinced it's a separate being, even though it isn't actually. So we can accept that that is what is occurring, and at the same time have a wish for greater peace. And in fact, from your own peace, that wish is it has to come true. It has to happen somehow. If I'm at conflict within my own self and I want things to get better out there, then my power is greatly diminished, because I'm wasting all this energy fighting myself. And my presence is diminished, my effect I can have on other beings. We can't manipulate other beings, but we can influence them towards their highest choice in that moment. We can give them a chance of a higher choice in any moment.
Can you just explain something else then to me, Helen? Just something that I can't grasp. When you talk about mirroring, I just can't grasp that. I don't understand it.
Nobody does at first, don't worry. It took me ages to figure it out. It's really, if I look at another being, the classic idea is, like, if you were standing here in this room with me, most people would agree that we're two separate beings.
Yeah.
But the truth is, whether we've realized it or not, that there's only one being, and it's experiencing itself through all these human bodies. Well, all the forms, but through all these human bodies. So anything I see in another being out there, what I thought was separate to me, has to be something inside me, because you are me. So it's like looking in a mirror, and the person I think is out there is actually what I'm projecting onto them out there. It's again, your mind is not going to understand this at first. Don't worry about it. Just listen to it several times, just with a gentle wish to understand, and it'll just fall into place.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. A lot of people struggle with this at first. If you just imagine it, everywhere and everything you look at is you, then
that's a bit worrying if you see it. Because then, you know, kind of the stuff that I'm talking about, then that means that that's me in my mind, you know.
Not you as a person, though. You as the great universal being.
Yeah.
And in various bodies, it's recognized itself completely. And when that happens, recognize its true nature, it acts in more loving, compassionate ways. And whatever it does tends to serve all of humanity. Where it hasn't recognized itself, where it's still convinced it's a separate being, it can act in some not so nice ways. And we all know that completely. What can you do to help that situation? First and foremost is to be in your own peace, because you'll be massively effective from there. And even your very existence is transmitting this peace before you even say or do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and then when you do say or do something, it's much more effective than coming from a fragmented psyche of a person who's in conflict with themselves. Good questions. Don't try too hard to understand it. Just kind of listen to it a couple of times, and something will start to click.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, good questions. Thank you. Paul, last but not least. We can't hear you, Paul. Can you unmute yourself? Thanks.
Sorry.
There we go. No worries. Everyone does it at least once or twice. Don't worry.
Did you hear anything? Well, you know, you wouldn't have heard anything I said.
Nope.
So at the start of the session, I kind of did have a question about, could this potential acceptance of what is kind of be an enemy to altruism? Because like recently, from a personal perspective, I've been kind of thinking, could I do the profession I do in a more altruistic fashion that, while it might make my life a bit more difficult, it might be better for the profession as a whole. And then, like, speaking to you, like listening to you today, for example, you made a comment that a spiritual person will look quite different to an enlightened being, because yes, the spiritual being will probably be that person who's trying to be altruistic, whereas the enlightened person would be more at ease with the fact that in that moment they're just not being ultra like helpful to others.
Mm-hmm.
And then I quickly realized that all comes from mind anyway, and I have no idea what's better for other people anyway. And that quickly moved on to the fact that they're not other people anyway, they're just me. So, and whatever is happening in my head regarding like how I can make things easier for them it's just me reflecting back to myself. So ultimately, I don't know if
you go around in circles then in a thought loop inside your head, right?
Yeah.
So well, let's look at why would you want to be altruistic? Sounds like a strange thing to say, but I think you said yourself that to make things easier for other beings. I think that's what you said, was it? So
other beings.
Yeah. So maybe we can start from what I found helpful, you know, because when I first started to wake up, I wanted to plan it. I wanted to help everyone wake up. But then I thought, well, maybe I don't know, like you said, what's best for other beings. You know, maybe awakening or whatever it is that I feel that's best for them isn't necessarily best right now. Maybe I don't know what that is, as you said as well. And maybe I don't have to know. Maybe if I stay in that place of not knowing, then naturally something good is going to come out of that. You know, a sense of whatever happens from that place is not being defined by my mind. It's not being scripted from there. It's just going to be something, we won't know what it is till it shows up, but it'll be something higher, better for all beings involved. You know, that's, and we can have these very noble intentions as we're waking up. You know, I used to, when I started teaching, I used to want to help other beings wake up, which may sound strange considering I'm holding Satsang, but I had to recognize that even that desire, intention is actually maybe getting in the way of something that wants to show up. Like what happens when I don't have any intention at all for this other being or myself in this moment, with something so much more beautiful than me wanting someone to be better than they are, to you know, help them even.
Would you say it's fair to say then that the path that sort of feels the least resistive might be like the right one for true self, or is true self just not really interested in whatever path it is?
It will naturally, the self will naturally show up in the highest way in each moment, manifestational wise. You know, it's doing that naturally, whether, and sometimes our least resistance can be because we're avoiding something, or it can be because it is the right path. Only you will know that moment. You know, if I try do it this way, it might be because some part of me is hiding from looking at something, or, you know, saying something to someone that I need to, or so only you know, but your body will tell you. If it's the right thing, there'll be a sense of lightness within your body. That's what your body's there for, actually, to kind of go, this choice feels better when I try it on, when I think about it. It just feels the right way to go. And you won't go too far wrong from that place, from that orientation. It'll just be, you seemingly make this choice that goes in the right direction, and new options will open up from there, sort of higher ones.
Okay.
Step by step, you kind of get guided along the way. Lovely.
Thank you.
Good question. Thanks for asking. Okay, we will leave it there for tonight. Some amazing questions. Lovely. Thank you very much. Namaste.